I want to start off with this landmark discrimination
Yeah,
case over a
yeah,
Bristol student's suicide. The judge has actually said that the university breached its duties in failing to look after this young woman. We should give people a quick background of what happened. This is Natasha Abrahart, who took her own life very sadly. But let's talk about what the situation was and how this could very well change the way legally that universities care for their students. So they already have to care for those with physical impairments, as I said
yeah.
before, lifts, ramps, if you're physically disabled. But mental disabilities, this is a new one, isn't it?
Well, welcome Bristol University into the 21st century. I think this is something that all of us have known for some time. A mental illness is still an illness. I'm surprised I even have to say that. This case, yeah. Trisha, was infuriating for me to read. I found it really heartrending. But I think the thing that made me angry was it showed in all its glory, really, that there is an arrogance that sometimes, sadly, often abounds in higher education institutions. And I have to say, 20 years or so ago, I think it was still around in places at Oxford when I was there as a student. But I have to say, at my own college, University College, attitudes towards student welfare have improved massively from what I can see. The outline events in this case, let's say her name, Bristol University might not like it, but they've got to take their medicine eventually. Natasha Abrahart. Well, she was somebody, young physics student, 20 years old, who, like many of us, dreaded speaking in public. Don't they often say that that's one of the things that people dread the most? But this was particularly obvious to everybody around her, Trisha. She was a very bright student, but she constantly, massively underperformed when it came to those kind of one-on-one type assessments, stuff that involved interaction, especially with more people. Now, the university knew at least this, but they also knew that she had anxiety attacks. I think that it's a matter of fact that they knew that she'd attempted suicide in the throes of her anxiety previously. Nonetheless, they insisted on her giving a presentation, which was one that carried marks, in a 300-seater auditorium, albeit with only 40 students and staff. But, you know, she was 20. Cast your mind back to when you were 20. I was in law school having to stand up to do a bit of advocacy for the first time. I think I was 24 years old. I was shaking like a leaf. You know, it's no surprise, perhaps, given what we already know about her, that she never got to give that presentation. She sadly took her own life. Now,
admitted she had problems. Now, she took her own life and her family were the ones that brought the action. And just talk about the result, what the judge said, and what implications that has for other universities.
Well, Bristol University had said, no diagnosis, we weren't under any duty to make reasonable adjustments for her to be able to perform in that situation. I think, you know, from the way I brought this in, my attitudes on this, they knew of it. They knew of other facts, and they failed to act. And that was the decision made not only in the High Court, but Trisha, they appealed it in the face of the parents' grief. They appealed it to the Court of Appeal, ostensibly because they wanted guidance about whether the fact that you know about a condition specifically is the same as whether you should be able to surmise it from all the circumstances. You and I, Trisha, have discussed cases like this in the past. Haven't I said on this very show, if somebody turns up with one leg and says that they need crutches, then you should probably assume that they're in some way disabled. You don't necessarily need a diagnosis. As far as what the consequences are in a wider sense for this, well, it's time to give a bit of an ignominious mention to the Vice-Chancellor of the university, because Professor Evelyn Welch, hope for that I'm in fairness saying that correctly, she says in appealing they were seeking clarity for the higher education sector around the application of the I tell you what, Trisha, I'm not buying it because it's common sense stuff and they've been beaten roundly on appeal twice. No guidance was required. Do you know what this looks like to me? This looks like face saving. It looks like PR gaslighting. And I have to say, the sentence in the statement that I think it really made my blood boil. She said, well, we need clarity for when staff do not know a student has a disability. Hang on a minute. Both of those judgments, implicit in both of those judgments, that you were belligerent enough to take in odious circumstances when you should have taken your medicine years ago and spared the family this grief. Your institution had all the information to know this girl was ill, or at the very least, she had a disability you shouldn't have accommodated. And in your hubris, you failed to do so. Now you're trying to clean it up and say, oh, well, we always know there's more to do also in the statement. I tell you what, bad PR, gaslighting. I'm very unimpressed.
So, Joseph, in future, it's highlighted that, as we said before, in the same way that universities should, adjust their curriculum and their there's grounds, the buildings for somebody with a physical disability, they need to do that. If somebody's clearly struggling, if they've had at least, they've taken their own lives, if they know that there's something going on, even though it might not have a label stuck on their heads, nobody with mental health issues does, they have to give the same. You don't make somebody, for instance, reads a text unseen if you know they have dyslexia, for instance. They have to take that into account. And the thing is, there are many forms of intelligence, and you don't have to tick every single box to prove that you're intelligent. So I'm really glad that ruling has highlighted that.